Hey everyone, I've been meaning to make this video for a long time, a video showing off the main features of my recording studio, my recording setup at my apartment. This has been a long project, it's been ongoing for several years. I've gone through several iterations and prototypes in different locations, and I've come up with a setup that I'm quite happy with. It's obviously still a work in progress, but most of the key components are done. I'm, like I said, really happy with it. I wanted to share it. And basically, there's several features that I'll be showing that address um, basically all of the main issues that I've had ever since I started setting up home studios back in high school. There's always been a couple things that just really bugged me about um, the physical setup of a studio, and how that affects the creative process. For example, I thought it was really important to try to make a studio that was as just as streamlined and easy as possible, where you can focus most on recording and songwriting, instead of um, having the studio itself get in the way. So I wanted to show you some of the features of the desk, and yeah, I hope you enjoy it. So the first feature that I wanted to highlight is the actual desk area here. Um, this has been an issue I've been facing my entire life. Every time I've set up a studio, there's always the same issue, and that is realistically, there are at least three things that every studio needs. They always, ideally, they would be right in front of you, but the issue is you only have so much space on any normal desk. The three things are keyboard and mouse, because almost everybody's going to be using a computer. The second thing everybody needs in their home studio is some sort of mixing console. The third thing is some sort of like desktop instrument, so either keyboards or beat pads. So it's usually three things you need right in front of you, and generally people either have to make a compromise somewhere. So the usual layout is like you might have the mixing console, and then you just take your keyboard and mouse and you set it right on top of the mixing console. It drives me crazy. The second thing is you usually have your keyboard off to the side, so you have to turn away from the screen while you're playing. And that works, but ideally I would have everything right in front of me. So I came up with this design where you get all three at the same time, and it's working really well. So what I have here is a two-tier desk system. So usually what I'm using most often is the keyboard and mouse. So that's right in front of me, and this is while you're sitting there, it just looks like this. You have plenty of space. Works great. Now, if you want to use the mixing console, all you do, you move this over, and you can get at all of your faders and position control. All your buttons are right there. Now, if you want to record in, you slide it over to the other side, and here you have your beat pad, or you can put your keyboard. I usually have a smaller keyboard that goes right in front of the beat pad, and then you can just slide it on back. So I'm very happy with this. You can basically have your cake and eat it too. The next main feature of my recording desk that I want to show is the area directly above my head, and right at eye level here. So the first thing is I have my laptop computer at eye level. So if I'm sitting here, I don't have to be straining my neck at all. And then right at ear level here, I have my two studio monitors. Now, if you look now slightly above the line of sight here, there's probably three main things to point out. First of all, and this is probably the most important, is my recording interface. Everything comes in and out of the recording interface, and so I felt that it should be in a very accessible position, should be as easy as possible to get to. I have a Universal Audio Apollo, and one issue with the Apollo, it can be a good thing and bad thing. It depends on your setup, but it is somewhat of an awkward shape. They designed it to be set on your desk so that the inputs and outputs are behind you on the desk. I didn't like that at all because every time you needed to change microphones, you had to pull the Apollo out, turn it around, basically fumble around with it, and it was just never easy to get to. Plus, it took up a lot of desk space, and as I just showed, I don't really have additional desk space other than the keyboard, mouse, the beat pad, and the mixing console. So what I did is right in front of me, just above my head, I've mounted the Apollo interface. And it's amazing because basically I can sit down, and if I need to adjust the volume, I just glance up. It's all within arm's reach. We'll turn the power switch on. There we go. It's as easy as that. So then obviously I can stand up and access all of the ins and out, the inputs and outputs here, and the power switch. It's very easy to get to, and I like this a whole lot better than having it just on my desk. Probably the second thing to point out is I have my microphone preamp right next to the interface. Generally, the design was to have the microphone signal all be as close as possible to the interface. Not for sound quality issues, just because I liked having the layout as simple and short as possible. The third thing to point out is at the same level, vertical level, so right above my head, I have my two pairs of headphones. Both have specific purposes. These are closed back headphones that I use for tracking. I use them most often, so they're to my right. And then I have my open back headphones that I use for monitoring if I can't have my the studio monitors turned up, for example. I have that also easily accessible. And then I have a small, let's move this closer here. And to keep the cable out of the way, put a small hook here, and then you just thread the mic or the headphone cable through, just like that. And so now when you're looking at it, it's not in your way. This cable's not hanging down. So the third main feature that I want to point out is basically my design for what to do with the guitars. Aside from the three main components that I need on my desk at all times, so the keyboard and mouse, desktop instruments such as the beat pad, and the mixing console, the other main thing that I always wished was closer to me while at my computer while recording was my guitar. I would always have the guitar and the amp basically with a mess of cables, you know, as close to the computer as possible. But you would always have to turn away, for example, or stand up, move around. It just always seemed like for a studio where you should be focusing mostly on actually playing and recording, you're spending a lot of time just moving around trying to connect things, and usually the guitar or the amp were in the way in the room. So this third main feature I'm very happy with, and basically the way I've come up with a solution to the problem is, let me move this a little closer. I have my guitars mounted to the side of my my desk here. So I have one guitar that hangs below on the side. The second one hangs above. So they're basically both hanging right on top of each other. And then next to me at basically eye level, I have my two favorite amplifiers. Another nice touch to this was I actually have the two amplifiers on their side So while I'm sitting at my desk, I can just reach over. That's the on switch. And then I have all the knobs right here. So I don't have to get up. I don't have to go looking on the top behind the amplifier for the switches. So actually turning the amps on their side made it a lot easier. So I'm just going to demonstrate how easy it is to take the guitar, turn the amp on, and start playing. So literally if I'm sitting at my desk right here, I can reach over, grab the guitar, pull it out, reach over, turn the amp on. The tubes are warming up right now. When you're done, just put the guitar back, turn the amp off. It's as easy as that. So the final feature that I wanted to show, which is honestly my most favorite, the one I'm most proud of, is what I've decided to do with the microphone. So there's two things that I wanted. Two conditions on my studio. One was I wanted my microphone to not have cables or a mic stand on the floor. Every studio I've ever had, there's always microphone cables running all over the floor, and there's always, with the mic stands in the middle of the room, basically it's impossible to walk around without moving the microphones, and usually if you move the mic, that changes how your whole recording setup is. So you're constantly going back and forth. It always drove me crazy, especially in a small apartment where you don't have a dedicated room for recording. So if you have a microphone in the middle of the room, you're gonna have to move it again, or someone can't walk through the room while you're recording, for example. So the first thing was to have the mic stand, no mic stand, or at least have it off the ground, no cables on the ground. The second main thing that I wanted was I wanted to have a reflection filter, which is kind of a new thing. I hadn't used one before, but I really liked the idea of basically taking the echo out of the room right at the source. And the SE Electronics, my understanding is they pioneered this technology, and I really wanted to have one for my microphone as well. The main issue with the reflection filters is they're quite heavy, at least relative compared to a microphone. So not only you have two options: either you get a second microphone stand, so you have two stands, one for the mic, one for the reflection filter, which is a problem according to the first thing that I mentioned, or you need one very heavy-duty stand that carries both. In fact, and it's quite unwieldy, and I honestly just didn't want that to be in the middle of the room all the time in the apartment. SE Electronics actually, with their space filter, or at least some of their reflection filters, they ship the filter with sandbags for you to fill with sand and place it on the ground to keep your microphone stand from tipping over. So that's how heavy these reflection filters can be. And honestly, that to me, there's no way I'm going to be weighting my microphone stands down in the middle of my apartment with sandbags. There's just got to be a better way to do it, and I think I found it out. I've basically come up with something that I'm very happy with, works really well, and addresses all of those issues. So I've solved those issues by using an articulated arm, this arm here, okay, mounted to my desk. So what that allows me to do, right now it's back in storage, so I actually have the reflection filter up here. It's out of the way, it's out of traffic, so I can literally walk right past my desk here. There's nothing in the way. But watch this. I can pull this over, okay, bring this down, and you see what's inside here? There's my microphone. Got an SE Electronics, what is this, 2200 microphone, and the reflection filter. also from SE Electronics. I've got it mounted on the arm. So while I'm recording, if I want to be standing up, for example, I can have this out here. Let's go like this, okay? It's easily at face level here. Or if I want to sit down, let's do this here. Okay? If I want to sit down, let's say play, if I want to actually sing, for example, sitting down, I can do it like this, okay? Or if I want to capture the guitar, just pull the guitar out here. Capture it all sitting down. I don't even have to stand up to put this away. Right? I can just push this out of the way, and it makes it so easy. Absolutely love this. I'm very happy with it. The final thing that I wanted to do, actually I forgot to mention this earlier, probably a third thing that I wanted my microphone setup, my stand setup to be able to do was also be able to record my guitar amplifiers at the same time. Instead of having to use separate mics for vocals and guitar in a small apartment, I'd rather just use at least one main microphone for most things, for the guitar, amps, acoustic guitar, or vocals, and not be switching microphones all the time. So check this out. The way I have this mounted is, so I have my two favorite guitar amps here, and if I just want to record the amplifier, I can move this up just like this, and I can position it right in front of the cab and get the guitar amp as well. So overall, I'm very happy with this design. Here, let's just say I'm done recording. So you just pull this up. There you go. Move it out of the way. It's all stored. Yep. And I have it mounted right next to my the microphone preamp here. So literally the cord comes down here. This is the mic cable, and I can either run it directly into the interface, or I can go into the preamp and then from there into the interface. So I'm very happy with this. I also wanted to mention the philosophy that I used for running all of the cables in my desk. The funny thing is, usually you set up your desk, all your equipment, your monitors, your keyboards and everything. You look at it and go, oh man, this looks great. And then you go to hook everything up and it turns into an utter nightmare. You have cables running all over the place, and somehow it went from that nice clean setup to a complete disaster. At least that's how it always is for me. So I was determined this time around to address that. So the main types of signals that you would have in cables, you would have like a low-level signal from a microphone, for example. You have more, I guess we call audio level, line level signals. So that might be going from your interface to your monitors, for example. You also have power signals. It's not a signal really, but a power cable. And then the last would be a digital signals. So USB, for example. I wanted to keep all four of those types of signal cables separate, or at least have a clear understanding of where each of those types of cables are going to go. So one thing, for example, is I made it that all power, it's not signals, but all power cables starts at the very top of the desk and works its way downward. So up here I've got my power conditioner, and then I have a set of, these are basically just, power switches that I can turn on and off different circuits. So I generally turn the Furman power conditioner on, and then depending on what I'm using, I can use the individual switches to turn them on and off. For example, if I want my monitor speakers on at the same time, I can just hit one of those switches. So the conditioned power starts up at the highest point of my desk, and runs downward. So I'm feeding conditioned power to my interface, for example, to my mic preamp, for example, and then further down to my monitor speakers, okay? But my computer doesn't need conditioned power, so I have one of these switches just plugged directly into the wall, and so I'm running unconditioned power to the computer, basically to things that don't need a clean power. So power starts at the top and works its way downward. Probably the lowest power cables are obviously for the mixing console and the beat pad. The next type of signal is the microphone signals, and again, my microphone input comes from the arm here and goes directly into the interface. So audio or mic signals are only in this central area here. Below me is all digital, at least on the desk here, this is all digital connections. So I have no audio going below this level, and no microphone signals going below this level. And like I just said, if you go further down, you have audio signals running at the monitors here. That's as far down as they go, because everything at the very bottom here, aside from the power, is all just digital signals. So I have USB running from here upward. So basically USB sources start at the bottom, work their way up to the interface, or I get just to the computer here. So again, it's mostly just to keep everything organized, and I definitely am happy with this. I don't have the feeling that cables are running all over the place. The floor, for example, the only cable on the floor is from the guitar amp, which I really like. Basically, it makes this place livable when you're not recording, and even when you are recording, you don't have cables running all over the place. Let's see here. Yeah, same with the headphones, for example. That's also audio, and that's only staying in this area too. I don't need audio running up to the power section. The last aspect of the desk that I want to point out is the two shelving units that I have built in. And what's unique about them is each shelf, so there's two shelves, one here, one here. Each shelf has a built-in basically rack unit. It turns out that a 2x4, so 3.5 inches, it's not 4 inches anymore, 3.5 inches tall, that is the exact spec for 2 half rack units. So I used that to my advantage, and I made out of 2x4s here, for example, this is 2x4, I made it so that you could mount your rack units into the shelf here, and here's another example with the mic preamp. You can mount equipment in between the shelving and then actually still have a shelf here, and then up at the very top I have storage up there. So I'm also really happy with that. It just makes it very compact. It's nicely laid out. You also have a lot of flexibility if you want to install a different rack component. Yeah, it takes care of that. I used to have a separate rack unit, but that was always on the floor or on the desk. It took up a lot of space. So this is a very compact, it's compact, and it's also, I think it kind of is aesthetic. I like how it looks, having it built into the shelves themselves. So another thing I'm really happy with. Something else about this desk that I'm really proud of is the overall cost. I had a lot of fun basically trying to make this for as little money as possible. I got all the wood for free off of Craigslist, pulled apart some pallets. The lumber yard has a scrap bin. I got a couple pieces of IKEA hardware in their half off section. Let's see here. The paint that I used was half off from the hardware store. They had mixed it incorrectly. I think the only things I bought technically new were the screws, I guess, the hardware, for example, and a couple other small things like the tracks for the sliding part of the desk. I got that from an online metals supplier. But overall, I would say I'd have to add it up exactly, but I think the total cost for the desk would be well under $50. That's not including the articulating arm and the equipment, though, for example. That was more expensive, but I would say it was also well worth the cost. And yeah, again, something else I'm really happy about and had a lot of fun doing it. So that was an overview of my home studio space. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, definitely put them in the comments below or let me know. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it.